We're out in California on the Recruiting Roadshow, brought to you by Greenhouse, where I'm speaking with some of the world's best recruiting operations professionals and recruiting leaders about the modern problems that are keeping them up at night. I'm out in Los Angeles, California, about to sit down with Tracy St.Dic. Tracy is the global head of talent acquisition at Zapier. In this conversation, Tracy and I talk about scaling RecOps processes, creating memorable candidate experiences, AI adoption, and Tracy's unique philosophy as a manager, developing her team with the skills they need as recruiters in the future of work. So please enjoy this conversation with Tracy. As recruiters, we think about talent density in the sense of like going out, finding great talent. Where do people come from? How do we map the products that they've built and what they want to do next? But to think that you have your own little unique talent density within the people team at Zapier it's very meta.
Yeah, it's very meta. I think what's interesting too is that, Teach for America was meant to kind of be the cornerstone and the foundation for people's careers. So spending time in the classroom gives you a set of shared values with other people who did that too. So it's not only just mission and focus on equality and diversity and inclusion and belonging and ensuring that everyone has the same opportunity to thrive in the world. But I think the type of person who does Teach for America, and you probably see this with folks that who've done it, is a lot of tenacity, a lot of hunger, a lot of going above and beyond, like willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done in service of others. And I think when you have that sort of shared values on a talent team, it's also really beautiful and really fun.
I think it's interesting too with the way people find work and fulfillment. And a lot of folks get into those organizations when they're young adults. They're kind of like bridge jobs for some, or they're opportunities to just connect with a large cohort of folks that are national service members. And we think about like national service often being through like the military or a government job, but there are these other corners of involvement of civic duty. And I think Teach for AmeriCorps is one of those amazing infrastructures. I did AmeriCorps Vista.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you're a fellow AmeriCorps Corps member?
Absolutely.
Same thing, yeah.
And I think there's like just some fun and enthusiasm in those post-collegiate years for folks that are privileged to go to college to connect with other mission-driven folks. And now you see at Zapier, like it's a very mission-driven organization. How do you think about the mission and the values of a corporate company coming from folks in your people team that live and breathe it forever? And now it's like, hey, how do we make this real for a corporate infrastructure?
I mean, it's so interesting because that's actually what drew me to Zapier was the mission. At Teach for America, the mission was to ensure that every child had access to an excellent education. So it's really democratizing opportunity in education. At Zapier, our mission is to make automation work for everyone. And that is literally everyone. It is the solo entrepreneur, it's the mom and pop shop, it's the enterprise, everyone. Because this is, and I think more so than ever with AI in particular, automation and AI are the future. It's the future of work. It's how we're all going to need to be able to access higher levels of productivity and quality, right? So democratizing that for the everyday person is Zapier's mission. And to me, that feels really important because the best story that I had is my first week on the job at Zapier. I was at my daughter's dance studio and I had my computer open. It had the Zapier sticker and the director of the studio came over and was like, wait, do you work for Zapier? And I was like, yeah. She's like, we use Zapier. Like my husband and I could not have this business if we didn't have Zapier. We'd have to hire so many people. It wouldn't be a business. I couldn't have this dance studio without Zapier and automation and how easy it made it. And that was my first week on the job. And I was like, okay, what we're doing is not just another tech company. It is truly trying to democratize access to a technology that will be life-changing for people and for businesses. And I think now, in the age of AI, that is true more than ever.
Oh, 100%. And when you think about the folks that come to Zapier, the folks that you work with on a daily basis. So you mentioned like Brandon or Bonnie, folks that are not technologists.
Yeah.
You yourself have said that you're not a technologist.
I'm not. I always say I'm not the best builder. I'm very good at the vision of what we need to build, and technically I'm not always the best.
How does Zapier up-level people operations and recruiting teams?
We focus a lot on this. I mean, so a couple of things. One, I mean, Zapier really believes not only for our product, but just the way the industry is going, is that we need to have a minimum level of AI fluency across the organization. And so when our CEO, Wade, called a code red back in 2023 around, we need to really think about not only up-leveling our product, but up-leveling ourselves in terms of AI and fluency and those technical skills, we all got to work really urgently on that. And so since then, we've been in this massive transformation of our organization where we are upskilling and supporting and up-leveling our current staff and Zapians. And then at the same time, what I'm responsible for is ensuring that every single person that we bring in is also meeting that bar. So we implemented a minimum bar for AI fluency back in June last year, and we have held tight on that. We have rejected people who haven't met that bar because we want to ensure that every single person coming in is going to be successful at Zapier. And then we're also going to give them the tools to get better. So in terms of things that we're doing as a company, I think it's been really fun. We hit 97% adoption in our last engagement pulse survey of people using AI daily. On the people team and on TA, that was 100%. And I think that is just a real demonstration of what we've been able to do. So concretely, we've built it into rituals that are part of our normal rhythm. So company hangouts, team meetings, hackathons, our offsites, all of this has components of learning and development related to AI and automation built into that. We redesigned our whole onboarding to have stronger, earlier product fluency and AI fluency support week one, day one. Like very clear expectation is like when you're here at Zapier, you will be AI enabled. We are an AI first company. And then with my team in particular, we've done a couple of things. We have, again, built this into rituals that we already do. So our teams, we're not asking them to do this as a side project or figure it out on their own. We're saying we're going to spend concentrated time, calls that we have for learning and development, and we're going to spend it learning about these tools, learning about Zapier, the tool, but also how do you use Zapier's MCP with Cursor or with Claude, and what does that unlock for you? And we set goals for them. So everybody on my team has a builder goal. They have to carve out time throughout the half to experiment on their own and with like team time of actually trying how to automate their work and get better at that, and then share that with others and give product feedback. And we're trying to create an environment where people feel safe to experiment, safe to try things, but also responsible for sharing that with others so everybody can sort of get better together.
I love that.
Yeah. It's been interesting. It's been fun. I think it's tough because recruiters are busy and they also have, the way that they do things is the way that they do things. But we're really trying to help people unlock the possibilities of how their work can be different with AI and automation. And Zapier is an automation company, so this is built into our DNA. So admittedly, we have some tailwinds on that. Like we have some lift. We've always thought about our value of building the robot. We say, don't be the robot, build the robot.
Totally.
Make your work easier through automation. And now with AI, I just think the bar for access there keeps getting lower and lower and lower and lower. So there's absolutely no reason why people shouldn't be using these tools to support them in their work.
This just sounds fun. There's a psychologist, her name is Dr. Emily Anhalt, and she publishes around this idea of leaders having a quality of play. And if more leaders let down their guard and model play for their teams, they'll earn more trust, they'll see more productivity. Working at Zapier just sounds a little fun.
It is very fun. And I'm very on board with that psychology as well, because I was also a dramatic arts major and a business major in college. And I truly believe that creativity is the unlock to strategy, right? So I'm just like fully on board with that philosophy. But I think it is fun. What I experience and what I think my team experiences when we're playing with whether it's a Zapier product itself as an AI orchestration platform or tools that we can connect to Zapier, there are these things that I like to call magical moments where people are just experimenting, they're trying something, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, that worked. And the light bulb goes off in their head. And those are the moments where people build confidence, but also trust in where the technology is going. And those are the things that empower them to think I can build this. So we just had a moment recently where we did a workshop for some folks at a company that's already a Zapier customer. And one of my rec ops leaders and I went in and we were showing them just how to expand their usage with Zapier. And they gave us a use case that was a pain point, a very manual pain point, where every time their recruiter made a hire, they had to send an email, like type out an email to the onboarding team and say, here's the hire, here's the start date, here's, what type of employee they are and the country, right? Every single time they made a hire. And I heard that and I was like, that sucks. That really sounds like not a fun or good use of your time. And so we showed them how to build a Zap in Zapier. And we're just like, well, okay, when, you hire the candidate in your ATS, it sends this email, it pulls in this information, and it sends it automatically. We built it and we're like, it's just boom, 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 the steps. And the recruiter was like, wait, that's it? We're like, yeah, that's it. She's like, well, it only took like 3 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, and it's going to save you 3 minutes every single hire you make for the rest of the time you work here. And you can do this for everyone on your team. And the way that the light bulbs you could see just going off, and it led to, wow, I could do that. So I could also do this. Oh, here's a spin on that workflow I could do. And then I could do this and this. And that's what's really fun is like, it's not just it's fun because we, go to happy hour together or we have a culture where we're just really good people. I mean, all of that is true, that the people at Zapier are incredible, but it's fun because the way that we are equipping our team members to unlock even beyond what they think is possible with their own work, with their own function. Like that is very fun. That is very cool. And I think the more that we see these magical moments happen across Zapier, the more that there's also a sense of possibility and creativity unlock of what this can do for them. And that's very cool to see.
And that compounds.
Yes.
It's a momentum game.
It's
you
momentum.
solve one problem and then you're all of a sudden,
Yes.
hey, how do I pattern match or apply similar thinking to a different problem? And then it sounds sort of robotic in the sense of like, okay, then let's solve tickets. Like, let's just come up with everybody's workflow. Go ask the team, what are the most painful parts of your day? And let's figure out how to automate them. But when you do that with creativity, it allows for the freedom and flexibility to build trust within the organization, trust that this person that we hired is making an exponential impact.
Yeah.
I used to not believe there was such thing as like a 10x employee before LLMs. I used to think like 2 to 3x is probably realistic for like an exceptional performer. Now I think with tools like Zapier, with more LLMs at the fingertips of folks, we're hitting a pace where 10x is potentially possible. As you think about assessing talent in the market, you mentioned assessing for AI literacy. How do you assess for AI skills?
A couple of things. One, I want to go back to your point around this 10x because I laughed a little bit because I feel like this is always the dream of every founder and every, any leader in tech, you have all those buzzwords and 10xing engineers, 10xing recruiters is one of them. But I think what's interesting and just this goes into AI fluency, but how we think about AI transformation at Zapier is that there's what we call adoptive AI and transformative AI. And adoptive AI is what I would consider people just using AI to make their work faster and maybe a little bit better. So you're thinking in percentages. I can save 10% of my time. I'm gaining back 25% of my time, right? All very important, but that's about personal productivity. And that's where I think most companies are now. The transformative stage, I think, is where companies are really redesigning who's doing the work, how the work is being done, and designing for outcomes. And that's where I actually think you get into multiples. So that's where kind of the 10x piece comes in. And so when I think about that for our team at Zapier as a whole, we're very big on a few things in terms of our philosophy with AI. One is that we want to automate away the toil, as I like to call it. And I think when you say toil, it's such a good word because you think about all the things that feel like in your job that feel like it's just toil. It's just mechanics, it's admin, it is the stuff that you don't want to do. So automate the toil, protect and preserve what's uniquely human, and then redesign and re-engineer everything else for outcomes. And so that's how we think about the work that we're setting out to do as a company with AI transformation. Now, to get back to your point around how we assess for that, so it was really a backwards plan motion, right? Of like, what did we need Zapians, as we call them, to be able to do in the company? What does that then mean for L&D and onboarding? And then what does that mean for hiring? So when we created this AI fluency rubric, I looked at 3 things: mindset, strategic acumen, and then builder skills. So what that means is mindset is looking at the curve and not the snapshot. It's not necessarily how you are with tools today, but where you're going. And so we're looking for that hunger, that curiosity, that ability to grow and learn and experiment and want to do so. We're looking for people who see the possibilities of AI, who are excited about that. Not that you don't believe that there are some risks and that there needs to be vigilance, of course, but that you have a much more optimistic view of what that could look like. So that's mindset. That's probably the most important. And then strategic acumen, which is the second pillar, is really about how you are a subject matter expert understanding your function and the future of your function. So how am I as a TA leader thinking about how TA is going to evolve with AI and being more AI enabled, right? What does that look like? Can I imagine or strategically think about what that means? And can I imagine a world where my work will look fundamentally different? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is technical builder skills. And we're tool agnostic. We don't believe that any one tool is going to rule the day. And actually, if you did, that would, everything's changing so quickly. It's like one tool one day, it's another tool the next day. So the builder skills are more about how do you start to put into practice and envision how your work can change. So mindset, strategic acumen, builder skills, those are the things that we assess for. And then we created a rubric that was, what's unacceptable, but what's capable? What's the minimum bar for everybody at Zapier? What is more the adoptive level, which is people really utilizing AI for specific workflows and ROI within their own work, looking at things like not just speed, but quality and also stakeholder experience. And then transformative is the people who are, and this is a very small amount of people, are already completely redesigning their work. One of the ways that we think about it is people who they have a problem and their first thought is to think through how can they solve that with AI versus how can we solve it and then how can we layer some AI on top of it too. So it's like an approach to the way that the work is being done.
I love thinking about a structured hiring assessment. And so to take it into like the recruiter workflow, when I think about assessing whether somebody has exceptional or acceptable skills, how do you train hiring managers to assess at the right level for the person that's in the interview process, whether it's an IC role or a director? I often see like a variance. Yeah. And recruiters often just trust a hiring manager when they say this person is like 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 4 on a certain skill set, or they're like a hell yes, or they're like, yeah, soft yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think calibration is the key to everything, not just with AI fluency skills, but any skill, right? Like that's a risk you have anywhere. So when we actually rolled out the AI fluency rubric, it was very calculated with how we did it. I thought about the two groups of people I could get calibrated the most quickly, and those are the ones that are really going to get to assess. It was my recruiters, and then it was our executive team. And we actually pulled the hiring managers and other interviewers out of the process of assessing AI fluency, definitely for the first, 6 months. And even now, it's still really concentrated in the recruiters being calibrated and the executive team being calibrated. And so in like anything that you're implementing in TA, you have to think about the change management and the operations of the process in a strategic way. So this problem of how do we calibrate on AI fluency when it's such a rapidly changing and dynamic term, as a TA leader, just strategically, I'm like, well, who can I control, for lack of a better word? Who can I ensure that we get calibrated? So we did a lot of extensive training with recruiters on our rubric. I mean, it's the easy answer. It's the obvious answer. And then we did the same with executives who were really invested and bought in because they helped me form how we were going to create it. So those are the two places we did it. And then we had very structured ways of implementing different checks for AI fluency throughout the process. So we assess it in 4 different places in our process. And at the same time, we were also very clear on what support we were giving candidates to meet this bar. Because when we rolled this out last year in May, June, AI fluency and expecting candidates to have AI fluency was a newer thing. Candidates didn't know what it meant. A lot of the industry didn't know what it meant. So we had to really define that. And we had to figure out if we're going to raise the bar, how are we also raising the level of support so that people can meet that bar? And so to me, it wasn't just the calibration, but it was also what do we expect to see and when throughout the process? And what are the signals, both hard and soft skills, that allow us to like understand how they're calibrated against those 3 pillars?
When you talk about how Zapier communicates with candidates, you have a commitment to candidates. And when you look at that, there are a few core pieces that I think are top of mind right now for a lot of recruiters. One is diversity, inclusion, and belonging and equity. And then the other piece is what is accepted use of AI for a candidate once they're in the funnel. Can you speak a little bit about both of those subjects?
So I am really proud. We pride ourselves at Zapier on our candidate experience, and we're always trying to improve. We're certainly not perfect, but two things I think that are kind of the cornerstone. One is that we have a set of candidate commitments, and part of that is that we're not going to ghost you. You will always know where you stand with us. We try to get back to candidates every 7 days, even if it's a no update, to ensure that they know where they stand, because we're honoring and respecting the time that they're putting into the process. And I think that's important because we're all humans, and that's an important thing to do. It's also important for our talent brand, right? Zapier is a company that is incredibly transparent. So that would be the other thing. We're very transparent with our candidates, specifically around now the use of AI. So we encourage candidates to use AI in the process. In fact, you can almost say we require it. That's just because what is a hiring process if not assessing how people are going to do the job? And so if we expect them to use AI on the job, we should expect them to use it in the hiring process. And so we want to be very clear, though. There is some red lines. So we put on our website a very clear guide of here's where you can use it, here's where you shouldn't use it, and here's acceptable ways to do it. So we could say, yes, use it to redo your resume, use it to support your application questions, use it to prepare for interviews. In fact, here's some sample prompts you can use. So it's like, here are all the tools, we want you to use it. And here's some places you shouldn't use it. For example, you shouldn't have it completely make up experience that you don't have just because it sounds like it matches the job description. That would be a red line. Or, in the interview, use AI to prep. Here's some prompts to help you prep for the interview and learn more about our company. And at the same time, do not have like an AI voice in your ear on a live interview. Do not be asking every question of your LLM in a live interview, because when you're an employee, you're not going to do that. So again, we're trying to mimic the hiring process to how we expect people to work in real life. And I think what's really interesting right now in the industry is I meet a ton of TA leaders who they say like, our execs are so weary of candidates using AI, especially in technical interviews, because it's like cheating and they feel some sort of way. And then I ask them, well, do you expect them to use AI at your company? And they're like, oh yeah, we are like completely transforming how we use AI for our engineers and for coding. And it's like, well, that feels like a huge mismatch. Like that doesn't make logical sense to me, because that's really not what a hiring process is meant to do. And so I think we're at this weird time in the industry too, where candidates are going to use AI. I think that companies have to design the recruiting process to accommodate for that and actually embrace that. And some companies, I think, are still struggling with what their philosophy is on that. I think Zapier very early on was like, we're going to embrace it, we're going to expect it, and we're going to teach people how to use it safely and appropriately, transparently, and accurately. Because even at Zapier, as a company, we say you can delegate the task, but not the accountability. And that comes straight from our CTO. And so you can use AI to do whatever you need to use AI for. And yet you are responsible for the outcome. So do not send me something that you didn't read. Do not put something out there that you don't understand, because when, the push comes to shove, you have to be responsible to explain it. And I think we have to hold candidates to the same.
Absolutely. And when I think about the stewardship of a candidate experience from the recruiting seat, from the talent operations seat, we're balancing the humanity with automation. And we're also facing challenges like candidate fraud.
We are facing candidate fraud challenges.
Absolutely. And top of funnel is crazy. And I know that you must be receiving thousands of applications per requisition. What do you think some of the problems are that are keeping recruiters up at night?
I think there are 3 problems keeping recruiters up at night. And to me, it boils down to volume. I think it also is variability and the vigilance they have to have. 3 Vs. The 3 Vs. They're thinking about I love alliteration. So the 3 Vs, I just came up with that. So I would say recruiters are thinking about volume, the variability, and vigilance. And what I mean by that is volume is just wild. It is just because there are so many candidates that are AI enabled, which again, I think is a good thing and they should be. It just creates massive volume for our recruiters. We see this everywhere. It's in applications. It's also the volume is not giving us the signal that we need. So it's not only volume, but it's a lot of noise. And recruiters just have to do more to be able to sift through and filter to get the top people that they actually want to talk to. So volume is an issue. But I think there's variability too, because at the same time, we're working in an environment, especially in tech, that's constantly changing. So hiring managers' expectations may be changing. The way that we think about AI fluency will evolve over time. Skill and candidate profiles are changing because the future of work looks very different than it did a year ago. So companies are constantly asking, how do we prepare ourselves for a future-facing workforce? How do we prepare ourselves to bring in people that are not just good today, but will also be good in 6 months and also be good in 2 years, if we can even imagine the future that far in advance? And so lots of variability and complexity that recruiters are navigating, even just within the hiring process. And then I think the last thing, vigilance, is, to your point, there's so much candidate fraud out there. In our work, we see this up to 20, sometimes even 30% for certain roles, like software engineering roles in particular. We have had deep fakes. We have had 2 different people show up as the same candidate on different interviews. We have had, the gamut. We've had everything. And then, there's a spectrum. We've also just had people who embellish their resume a bit, which is a tale as old as time, right? So there's a spectrum of candidate fraud, and we're dealing with all of it. And so recruiters have to be very vigilant because nobody wants to, be the recruiter. I don't want to be the TA leader who signed off on a hire that is actually somebody with malintent as a foreign actor, right? Like there's just a lot of risk involved. And so you have to be thinking about that as you're trying to sift through everything else. So recruiters have just a lot on their plate right now. And I
100%.
think technology and the tools that we can give them to make that toil a lot less is our responsibility, because we also see recruiters are burning out. Like, it's not sustainable that we're asking them to, still make incredible hiring decisions at speed. They have to have speed, and they have to have quality, and they have to have, all of these things that line up, and they have to prevent fraud all at once. And that is a bigger charge than we've ever had to ask recruiters to do. So the more tools we can give them so that they can focus on automating the toil, but preserving the human aspects they really love, like, that's our responsibility as talent leaders, I think.
Now, your boss, Brandon, has a new role, and one of the first in the industry.
Yeah.
So as we think about this role that people operators, whether they're in the HR side or the recruiting side, will take on, it is a little bit more tech forward. Recruiting is one of those lower barriers to entry within the corporate tech environment. And now we're asking them to do something that is far outside the traditional remit of recruiting and running a great hiring process, which is prove if somebody's real or not. Where do you think the line is for a recruiter, an individual contributor who's sourcing, getting candidates excited, consulting with hiring managers, moving them through a process and helping close, to now have to
That was a lot, yeah.
add on, like, hey, prove if this person is real? That seems like an exceptionally risky judgment call.
I think that's where we have to provide the tools to help them, because they're not able to do that on their own. And the technology from those malicious players is going to get better too. So even if we figure out, here's, our standards to prevent fraud today, well, the technology for them is getting better like it is for us. And so I often think, in my nightmares, it's like, it's not a matter of if, but when. When are we going to accidentally hire somebody that we shouldn't be hiring? And what's going to be the scope of that? And what's going to be, the implications? And how can we minimize that? Because I just think the technology on every side is getting better. There's a couple of things that I think is really positive about the industry, and that's the fact that a lot of companies are trying to also solve this. So you're seeing certain ATSs or interviewing platforms like start to build in candidate fraud detectors. We are making a big bet and experiment on agentic recruiters. And I think that there's a number of things that we get from that process, right? And that having that platform and that step that helps us prevent fraud. But we also, at Zapier, we even have our own controls. So we built a Zap, which is available to everybody, where it actually also does its own fraud detection as well. And then just flags for recruiters, hey, this is maybe medium risk, it's low risk, it's high risk. Investigate this. It's not, an automatic rejection, but it's training our recruiters to see the signals and then act on the signals and do our best job as we can to investigate. But it's also, it's not something they can do on their own. So you need the technology. That's one place where I feel like the technology has to be a part of your stack to make this helpful and useful for recruiters.
100%. This is one of those areas that I've seen firsthand where that feeling of hey, I think this person that I'm on a Zoom call interview with is not the person who I preliminarily screened in a phone call or reviewed the resume or exchanged emails with. That feels different than the rest of the recruiting work. And I think that's an important signal for recruiters to recognize. And that, for me, is where I recognize, like, hey, this work feels different in a way that is not based on my training or experience. So let's maybe automate that type of work. What can't be automated and what should rely on human judgment in the hiring and assessment process?
Well, I think context and judgment cannot be automated, like, period. And it shouldn't be. I think that's one of the things when we say preserve and protect the unique human aspects of hiring or anything that you're working on, like, that's what we mean. So much of recruiting, I think, is an art and a science. And yes, there's a lot of toil and admin and your, communications and managing a lot of things. All of that can be automated. But when it really comes down to why are recruiters in this work? They want to ensure that they're meeting and identifying incredible people who will do brilliant work at our company. And they want to make sure that the candidates feel supported, they feel championed. They want to ensure the hiring managers are making great decisions. We have to advise them and educate them on how to do that. We need to understand how the candidate not only is going to do in their job, but also within the company. All of that is context. A lot of that is synthesis of pulling together all of these insights that recruiters, brilliant recruiters, pick up on throughout the process to be able to help your company make a good judgment about if this candidate can do the job and if they're going to be able to be successful in your company's environment. I don't think at this point, because I could be proven wrong in 5 years, I don't think that that's anything that AI can do. AI can surface the insights, it can give you the research, it can help you make better decisions faster, but it absolutely cannot make the decisions for you. And I don't see anytime soon where legally, morally, or ethically that should be the case, right? So I feel very, very strongly about that. And I also think recruiters, really love the relationship building. And that is not something that can be automated either. The best, just like being a teacher, like the best moments of a recruiter is when somebody you really believe in, talent you've identified and feel like you want to develop, gets in and is successful in your company. That's the best reward, right? And you're building a company full of people that you have identified and helped bring in. So you're helping build the product, build the infrastructure, really build the success of the company. And so the more that they have the time to help with the quality decision making, the better for them, but also the better for the company.
When you think about the art and science, what are some more of those skills that align to the art of recruiting that will help a recruiter differentiate themselves and have a sustainable career path?
I think this is changing really dynamically. So now, when I think about the future of recruiting, I think that everyone's going to have to be an orchestrator, a builder, and a subject matter expert. I think recruiters for the future are going to need to lean on their subject matter expertise, but also start to cultivate what we call builder skills or technical skills. How are they thinking about utilizing AI and technology to not only help them be more productive and more efficient, that's only one piece of the puzzle, but also produce better quality work, whether that's better quality decision-making or analysis or trend and insights gathering, whatever it is. And then also, how does that help them have a better candidate experience? So whenever we do anything related with AI on my team or at Zapier, we always think within those three lenses. It's efficiency, it's quality, and it's stakeholder experience, which in our case is candidate experience. So when I think about the future of recruiters, the way that they're going to be able to do that is to have the subject matter expertise, but also start to be able to build a lot of things on their own that will help them automate workflows, get better insights, and be able to coach and communicate with all the variety of stakeholders that they have. And so that is the future. It's almost like saying every recruiter is kind of going to be a part of Rec Ops, or Rec Ops is going to get even bigger. I think the roles on Rec Ops become even more important because you're thinking about how to centralize some of these systems. We're not just relying on habits and practices that we learned, 10, 20 years ago, but really what is the future of recruiting and how do we enable a new workforce to move from how we did recruiting in the past to how we're doing it in the future. So whether that is that Rec Ops becomes more important and gets bigger, or that all recruiters become operators as well, I'm not sure. But I think there's something there where people are going to have to think about being an architect and designer of the system, not just a participant in the system. And I think that's true for all roles, but in recruiting, I think absolutely.
And that's what I love about Zapier being this AI orchestration tool. Yeah. It's not like Zapier spent the last few years building its own LLM and they're trying to
No,
compete. It's
yeah.
like, no, we're going to enable you to do your unique workflow across your creative tech stack. And when I think about recruiters doing this, it's borrowing some of the methodology from RecOps, where recruiters need to be better storytellers. Historically, RecOps has been responsible for dashboards and automating those reports to leadership. Two areas of RecOps that I'm excited about are sourcing and employer brand. I think historically, those two have lived in the shadows of traditional talent operations work. And now they're more important than ever because storytelling is vital for candidates.
Yes.
And then sourcing is quickly becoming automated when we think about mapping markets, understanding where talent density is, understanding movement and signals. It's become a little bit more mainstream to have those type of orchestration mechanisms around how great sourcers source. So I'm excited about this because it just gives recruiters more work to focus on and identify their strengths, their passions. I always think about recruiters having a major and a minor in their remit.
Yeah.
So if your major is software engineering hiring for L5 engineers, you're going to do it rinse and repeat. What is your minor? Maybe your minor is working on sourcing. Maybe your minor is working on employer brand. Maybe your minor is working on data visualization. Maybe your minor is working on candidate experience and journey mapping. If there's just some additional part of the job we can give to recruiters, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier around that creative outlet and a little bit of breathing room within your day-to-day to be creative and to challenge yourself so that you stay motivated. And the next thing you know, the reality is we have career paths in RecOps where we're seeing more RecOps leadership. Folks that have 15, 20 years of career experience. Gone are the days where the only way to increase your earnings or your relevancy within the organization is to go up to a director or VP of recruiting where you're managing full cycle recruiters.
Right.
Now you can be a leader and a respected seat at the table for the operational workflow because the C-suite is now able to see how vital it is to optimize for speed, for understanding not only sourcing and talent mapping, but the candidate experience that comes from automating a candidate journey with employer brand content.
Oh, absolutely. And I also love your metaphor of the major and the minor, because I also think, to your point around what's the future of recruiters, like, we have to develop them in different ways. I think it's not enough to just be an expert at software engineering. You have to be able to understand all of the different aspects of the holistic strategy of talent. And the more we can give recruiters those skills, allow them to have those creative outlets, the more flexibility they have, the more development they're able to have, and then the more opportunities for their own career paths, whether that's inside or outside of recruiting, honestly, because I think we both would probably agree that recruiters can do anything. There's a lot of soft skills that recruiters have that can be great in a number of industries too. But I'm so with you on the RecOps leader. At Zapier, we have hired from internal folks what we're calling AI automation engineers. And so our first AI automation engineer was actually for the people team. And it was this incredible Zapian who was on our L&D team. Her name's Emily Maybe. And she became our first AI automation engineer. And the way that she has not only supported the team to imagine and then build workflows differently across our entire people team, but also really focus on the enablement of allowing people to also build for themselves and have those magical moments, right? That has been an incredible unlock for our entire people team in terms of what we can focus on, what we can accomplish, things that we didn't think were possible. And so then just that's the people team. Take that down to RecOps. And, we're hiring for an analyst for AI automation on RecOps, right? On our TS Ops team, our talent strategy ops team. And that's because I completely think that's the future. We're in a point right now where we could start to just put AI on top of the processes we already do. And I don't think all of those processes are perfect. And I think AI will just accelerate what's broken about hiring in general. We need folks in RecOps and we need other, TA leaders to re-envision and reimagine, re-engineer what hiring looks like, period. And that's not going to happen overnight. You need people with the subject matter expertise and the chops to build and to understand automation and AI to be able to do that. I heard very recently, this came from Casey Fiery on my team, an analogy around how we think about, again, adoptive versus transformative AI, or what TA needs to do right now. And she showed two pictures on the slide of a map of Boston, a map of how Boston is laid out, and a map of New York. You could probably see where this is going. And she said, what a lot of teams are doing right now is they're doing what Boston did. They had dirt roads, and then they made those cobblestone. Then they put concrete over it. And they just kept building and building and building on top of this infrastructure that they already had, that when you look at it today, you're like, it kind of looks a little chaotic if you look at like how their streets are laid out. It doesn't totally make sense. But they just said, well, this is what we have, and this is how we've always, had the city laid out, and we're just going to keep building on top of it. And so now it's permanent. And what New York did is when they started really building their infrastructure, they kind of paused and stopped and took a second and said, wait, how can we actually make this city more efficient? How can we actually redesign this to make it better? And you look at New York and you have a grid, right? It's very clear like how to get to places. All the streets are numbered. Then you have the avenues, right? And I think that's the moment we're in right now. And I think you need folks on Rec Ops and recruiters who can lean into Rec Ops that can start to understand, what have we done and why did we do it that way? What's the true essence of that? And how can we redesign it? And then, again, going back to creativity, how do we have the creativity to think about what the new possible is? That's what I'm really obsessed with as a talent leader, is what is that new possible? Why do we have these legacy practices in talent and hiring processes that we just assume have to be the way it is?
I love this analogy of Boston and New York, because
you can picture it, right? You
absolutely.
Can see it. Yeah, you can
100%.
See it. Yeah.
And when they architected Lower Manhattan, they famously forgot to account for alleyways. And that's why all the trash is on the front of the street in neighborhoods like Chelsea, and it smells terrible and they have this awful rat problem, is because when they built the infrastructure, they forgot something critical.
Mm-hmm.
If you were building the infrastructure of a recruiting team today, what corners would you see around? And what would you do differently from even just a few years ago?
Gosh, that is the million-dollar question that I'm trying to figure out, Brandon. I think we have to get back down to redesigning for outcomes, right? And what is the point of a hiring process, period? In my mind, the point of a hiring process is being able to identify talent and evaluate whether that talent can do the job successfully and also be successful in your company's environment. Right? And you have to have a high degree of confidence on both sides, the candidate and the company, that those things can be true. And that's all a hiring process is. There's nothing about that is like, we have to have a resume or we have to have a cover letter, if companies are still doing cover letters. I hope not. And I think, like, why did resumes happen in the first place? It's probably because we had too much volume at some point. We needed a way to have a filter to decide who we should talk to with that first criteria, who could even do the job, right? As resumes become more AI-enabled, we're getting less signal from them. And so we need a different filter. Otherwise, recruiters are just continuing to have to broaden their scope, right? So when I think about redesigning TA and the hiring process, I want to go back to the very essence of what are we trying to do? How can we identify the people we need through different methods of sourcing, whatever sourcing looks like in the future? Talent mapping, talent intelligence, stronger employment brand so that people are coming to you who are the right fit. Like, I think there's a lot that we can do to think about how are we identifying talent. And then on the evaluation of talent, think about what are the signals we're going to be able to trust. I can't trust a resume anymore. Like, it's important for me to know where you worked and how long you worked there, but everything underneath that, I have to assume that you used AI to do that. And out of 500 resumes, 499 look perfect. So what do I do with that as a recruiter? Nothing. So why do we have it? Why do we have resumes? Why do we have applications? People are using AI the same way. So what are going to be the new technology-enabled things that we can do that allow us to get the signal we need to make that evaluation? Two things that I'm thinking about a lot is when you think about what a resume and application was meant to do, it was meant to be a filter so that recruiters could then have a screen, right? And what's the purpose of a screen? A human probing and getting deeper and understanding if that candidate experience is real, right? So how do we make that the first filter? This is why I'm so interested and curious about agentic recruiter screens, something that I would not have been interested in even 8 months ago, but have this really emerging curiosity of like how they can help solve that pain point. So that's one. I'm really interested in how we think solve the top of the funnel, how we get better signal faster and still preserve recruiters' time by having a strong enough filter that allows them to still focus on the people that we truly think could be the best fits for the company. I think the other thing that's going to have to really change is this balance of internal and external signal. We can have all the confidence in the world in our hiring process, But honestly, I see references having a revival, like some form of references, not necessarily written references. Like we'll figure that out. We do a lot of live references at Zapier because we want to talk to the people who worked with you and know your work best. And that will allow us to understand not just if what you said is true, but how did that play out? Did people see it the same way? What was your impact on others? Again, starting to assess not just can you do the job, but how will you be successful within the company? So I think there was a long period of time and probably a lot of companies now where I talk to TA leaders and they don't do references at all. Or they just do written references and it's sort of a check the box. Like we gave an offer, we'll just like make sure there's no red flags. They're in, whatever, something comes back, no one's really reading it, whatever. And I think that's got to change. So at Zapier, we put a really large emphasis on live references. That feels really important to us. So these are like, I don't know what the answer is, but these are some things that I'm thinking about. Again, going back to the essence, how do you identify people? How do you evaluate them for the role better? And then how do you ensure they're going to thrive in your company and ensure that you have that confidence on both sides, including how does the candidate feel about you? So how are they utilizing AI? How are we providing them with tools that they can learn about us so that they can be confident in those things too, better and faster and with, a higher quality decision on their side if they're the right fit for us. So those are the things where I think we're going. Have we figured it out yet? No, I haven't.
There's two things you said that are fundamental aspects of recruiting that have existed that are not AI, that are not automation, they are not new concepts. And one, it's the index on references. And two, it's the injection of friction at the top of funnel. Zapier has done this for years where you inject behavioral screening questions as open text at the point of application. World-class inbound application and recruiting systems are optimizing for around a 1% conversion rate. Teams are usually made up of around a third of inbound applicants. So when we think about the high volume of rejections, the candidate spam and applicant spam that we're seeing at the top of funnel, leveraging friction and leveraging references can actually deliver a high value of signal earlier in the process. And when I think about bringing references into the assessment, I actually enjoy them around a mid-stage, not the final stopgap, because then you can glean insights.
Yeah.
When I think about when you scale from, say, 100 to 1,000 people, what do you think breaks for recruiters and is the first thing to go?
I mean, I think calibration breaks first. Calibration and then consistency. When you're scaling that quickly and you involve more people in the process, there's more handoffs, there's more variability. So who holds the pin on what good is? Is it the recruiter, the hiring manager, the 10 new hiring managers you're trying to train, all of the executives? I think the calibration can break first. And so without really clear, strong, smart processes, that breaks. I think then consistency and the handoffs are things that break next, right? So are we giving every candidate a consistent, fair, as unbiased as possible experience where they feel like there's transparency, inclusivity for them, like all of those things that we want to be true about the candidate experience. When you move really fast, some of those things can fall through the cracks. When you're trying to scale from 100 to 1,000, those are the things that I think could see breaking. I think there's a big emphasis on speed. Companies that want to scale from 100 to 1,000 quickly, they want to do it quickly, right? They're like, we got to do this. We got to do it fast. We're growing. We're in a hyper-growth mode. It's about, we want talent density, but we also want speed. And I think people have to think about decision quality per unit of time. So it's not just about how do we get faster, but how do we make better decisions in a more efficient way?
Decision quality per unit of time is a wonderful metric. I love this idea of what's breaking first is involved with stakeholder management. The way recruiters earn trust and respect and credibility with our stakeholders, particularly a technical audience, is often through data visualization, data reporting, context setting and storytelling around the candidate funnel, around our progress, around our activity. What are some more of those metrics that you think are going to be core to recruiting now and in the future?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I'm a big fan of quality of hire, and I think quality of hire is also a term that people throw around and measure it really differently. We have a pretty tailored and personalized algorithm for Zapier where we look at quality of hire not just within the first 30 to 90 days, but over the course of a year of a candidate's first year at the company. And we have an algorithm that I think is pretty sophisticated as it relates to engagement plus retention plus performance. And then we have multiple calibrated measures within that, right? So I think quality is always going to be paramount. And then I don't think it's necessarily like new metrics that we're looking at, but it's metrics that are maybe legacy that we're monitoring to see how things change. Like I'm still looking at time to hire, time to fill. And I know some people think those are really antiquated, but I think about time to hire as how we honor the candidate's time, and time to fill is how we honor the business's time. So I'm also looking at, how many interviewer hours per hire are we making? Are we able to make better decisions, quality of hire, faster? How many hours are we interviewing? Time to hire, time to fill, right? Better decisions faster. And then I'm looking at things like candidate stakeholder experience. So it goes back to the very simple principle that anything that we're trying to do is about improving efficiency, improving quality and decision-making in this case, and improving stakeholder experience. Candidates, hiring managers, everyone. And so those are the metrics that tied to those things are the things that I'm going to continue to look at, because then I think you have a holistic view of quality plus speed plus experience, which has not only short-term implications, but long-term implications around talent brand, around how people view your company in general.
When you think about quality of hire, who's accountable to that metric?
I think hiring is a team sport, and I think quality of hire is a team sport. So when I think about quality of hire, I think about it as a suite of things that contribute to a hire's success. So I absolutely think that talent acquisition is on the hook for that in terms of smart decision making, getting the signal that we need, understanding and defining what's the signal we need, ensuring that we get it, and ensuring that we're advising hiring managers how to take that into account. Obviously, hiring managers are responsible for it. I think L&D, learning and development and onboarding, is responsible for it, because how we set expectations with people in the hiring process and how we expect them to grow in their first 30 to 90 days is a joint effort. One of the things that we implemented when we tried to improve quality of hire is we said, rather than recruiters just doing the offer call, we want hiring managers on the offer call, because we want them to set expectations about why we love the candidate, but also where we expect them to grow and where we need them to grow, and how we're going to give them that support. And so we're setting that expectation with candidates early on. We're ensuring that that information is then transferred into their first 90-day plan, right? So they're very clear on where we need them to grow. We have a plan in place to support them to do so. And so that is then the hiring manager, the manager, and onboarding working together to make that true, right? And then I think there's so many other things just around the environment that people are in within their first year that create variability. So I think it's a team effort. I think if you have a company, a C-suite, a CEO, which we do at Zapier, who believe that hiring and quality of hire is not just one team, it's not just TA's job to hire people, it is truly a team sport. That is where you can actually see things really change. And we're very lucky at Zapier because our CEO is very invested in hiring. He thinks talent is one of the most important things he can do with his time, which I really appreciate as a talent leader. And so when you have that, then everybody's responsible. And then we can all sort of understand where in that spectrum we can solve problems to ensure that people can be more successful here.
You have a background in creative arts. Wade has a background in music. And we talked a little bit about play and fun. I appreciate the modeling of the creative aspect of passions in what we do outside of work, because often in business, we see a lot of sports analogies.
We do.
I have a background in both athletics and in performance arts and music. So when I see teams and hear about teams that have a background in creative and performance, it brings me a little bit more joy, because we get to see that. And we also get to see amazing teams that are building innovative products that have really strong employee bases that don't necessarily come from that traditional business trope of sports and performance. So I wanted to call that out. What do you think about that in general, and this idea of people having a creative background versus an athletic background as it relates to performance, motivation, innovation?
There's something around people who are creative that have a different approach to experimentation and a low enough ego to say it doesn't have to work perfectly the first time. You can always get better. You can always mess up. You can always come back from that. Most decisions are reversible. And so when we even think about what we're doing at Zapier in terms of trying to do the best for our customers, whether it is how we're experimenting with AI, I think that comes out where it's let's just try it. Faster is better than perfect. We don't have to be perfect. And if you're an artist, you know that perfection is something that you never reach anyway, right? And so I think it just gives a little bit more of license to be creative, to experiment, to not get it right the first time. And when you have an environment like that, I think one, you have a bit more psychological safety. And two, you make it completely not only fine, but also really encouraged to push the boundaries. Artists push the boundaries all the time. That's part of their function in society, right? And so how can you do that in your work? And I think if you come with that approach, then you can bring that into your work.
I want to go back to what you shared a minute ago around time. You are indexing on time. I also believe that time to fill is a fantastic measure. It is historically one of the most important variables that recruiters can control.
Yeah.
How quickly can we get the right folks in seat so that we can hit the OKRs tied to the strategic plan within that year? And I like to zoom out on time to fill a little bit and look at what are the percentage of roles we have filled on time in the headcount plan.
Yep.
That way we're not nitpicking over,
Yeah.
43 versus 47 days on a role that has a 45-day time to fill goal. When we think about time, this actually goes back to the piece of recruiter enablement, recruiter advancement, and the future of recruiting. If we inject automation and AI at the top of the funnel, we're going to free up time for recruiters to spend more time with highly qualified candidates, which will change the traditional pass-through volume we've needed to get to a hire.
Absolutely.
What that means is recruiters can work more recs. That's actually better for recruiters because it gives them more at-bats. And if recruiters have more at-bats, they're going to develop in their career faster so that they can have the opportunity to learn perhaps different strategy on stakeholder management, work with different types of leaders, work on different types of roles. So if maybe you fill 10 software engineers and you achieved your time to fill goals, you can take maybe a corporate rec, a G&A rec, a go-to-market rec.
You can have that minor, whatever that minor's in. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm excited for recruiters to continue to embrace time and embrace top of funnel automation and AI for what it can do for them as an individual.
Time is the commodity, right? And it's just so scarce these days. Giving recruiters more time to spend the time on the things that really help them become stronger recruiters and make better decisions for the company is always going to be the goal. So whether that is that, all these advancements in technology give them more time to hold more recs, or time to do more talent mapping, sourcing, more time spending, time with the hiring manager, helping them understand our standards and our process, helping them make better decisions. There's so many times where we have a new hiring manager come into the company and we have to really re-educate them on the whole process. Or we have new interviewers who are not yet calibrated and maybe have some, bad interviewing habits, right? But we're also just like, well, just keep going. We got to, we have recs to fill. So I think about all the things that time can allow. It's not just more, but it's also better. And I think sometimes when we talk about AI, a lot of companies and people are focused first and foremost on the efficiency. There are solutions we've implemented with AI that actually are not more efficient, but they enable better quality. And that is just as valid. So yes, I agree with you that recruiters can potentially hold more recs and have more at-bats. They'll learn a lot more. They can be more flexible. They'll build their skill set, absolutely. But also they'll be able to go deeper, potentially, in building those quality hires. More on the advising, more on the guidance, right? Those also build other skills, right? Those also build other skills that could lead them to roles in, becoming an HR business partner or digging really deep in compensation strategy and total rewards. And those are just people team functions. So, I think there's something that we need to look at when we think about how is AI going to improve the lives of recruiters, but also improve the career development and trajectory. And there's a lot of different ways that could look. And I think that's really exciting. I think recruiters who know that and have figured that out, they're not scared that they're going to lose their job because AI automates tasks, not jobs. So we just have to change the tasks that they do. The tasks that they're doing now are, mechanics in a lot of cases. How do we change that so their job is something that is uniquely human, that we're preserving and protecting, but also gives them the opportunities for that development? And whether you're in recruiting or anything else, that's the key. And that just goes back to me being a teacher, right? This is the teacher in me. How I think about talent comes out from when I taught kindergarten through Teach for America. It's a very clear through line.
Tracy, you mentioned time is our most precious commodity. Why will have recruiting been enough for you when this is all said and done?
I think that the work that we do is in some ways bigger than recruiting. We're bringing opportunities to companies, but also to people that can be life-changing. I thought about this when I was at Teach for America and would talk to college seniors who are like, my mom wants me to be a doctor and I'm on this path to be a lawyer. And they have a passion for service and for equity. And we're helping them be able to see that spending 2 years in the classroom through Teach for America is your opportunity not just to align your values with your work, but to also create new perspectives that are going to influence everything that you do, right? And it's going to unlock a whole different level of not just skills, but also perspective that will guide the rest of your career trajectory. It's one of the most incredible opportunities I've had. When I think about talent at any company, especially working at a place like Zapier, who, has a great brand and is an awesome opportunity, people who get jobs at Zapier, that could be life-changing for them too. It can change their trajectory. It could change their family's trajectory. It could change we're a remote company. That can help candidates in so many ways and unlock different things for them so that they can pursue their outside passions, so they can spend more time with their family. So I don't think about recruiting as just we're filling roles at all. And that in itself wouldn't be enough. But when I think about recruiting is we're building companies, we're building people, we're helping people build their lives. Like that's really the essence of what we're doing. And when you work for a company like Zapier, whose mission is to democratize something that can make everybody's lives better, then you want to help build that company as fast as possible. And you want to ensure that everybody you bring in can thrive and have a stronger quality of life, more fulfillment in what they're doing, and more engagement and motivation in building their own future. So I think that is enough for me.
What advice do you have for recruiters out there?
My advice for recruiters is to keep getting curious and really start to understand and embrace the technology that's in front of us, to not get stuck in, I feel behind, or I worry I'm going to lose my job, or keep learning, keep growing. This is advice I'd give to anybody, but for recruiters in particular, our industry is changing so quickly. I have a huge passion and vested interest in helping it change even more quickly and helping AI accelerate how the industry is changing. But I want recruiters to feel like they're a part of that, and they can also help shape that future. So my advice for recruiters would be keep learning and keep learning how to build, because your subject matter expertise plus your ability to envision and then implement solutions that support quality, diversity, inclusiveness, and incredible talent at your company, that's going to make you really marketable, but it's also going to make the role really fulfilling for you too.